Hello, and welcome to the Arbitration Conversation. For some of you who have been watching the Arbitration Conversation, you know that we are going to reach 100 episodes very soon. And then these final run up to the final 100th episode, we are bringing in the best and the brightest. And so therefore today we have Professor Lela Porter Love. Now, Professor Love is really a rock star of dispute resolution. That's really the best way to explain it. Everybody knows who she is. I assign her articles in my own classes because they're so fantastic. She's the director of the Kukin Program for Conflict Resolution at the Benjamin and Cardozo School of Law in New York City. This program has been very highly ranked since year 2000. And in fact, Professor Love also founded Cardozo's Mediation Clinic, which is one of the first clinical programs to train law students to serve as mediators. She has been a mediator, an arbitrator, a dispute resolution provider of all sorts and kinds. She is also the past chair of the American Bar Association section of dispute resolution. She's also the author of casebooks and many, many articles. And she received the International Academy of Mediators, gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award. Also, the American College of Civil Trial Mediators gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award, and she received the Frontline Champion Award at the Association of the Bar of New York City on Mediation Settlement Day back in 2009. There's so much more I could say about Professor Love. I'm just thrilled that you were able to take some time with us.
Amy, I wish I could return that wonderful introduction because you have terrific accolades, and I'm not, you hear the intros like that and you think, me, really? Okay.
True though, it's
Thank
true.
you very much. And I'm very impressed with you and your work, let me say.
Well, the topic today is actually really going to be helpful for me. I'm going to tell you the truth. I am currently teaching it's kind of a survey dispute resolution course. And we are at that stage in the class where we've been talking about mediation, and now we're going to transition to arbitration. And so the topic for this arbitration conversation is going to be about this question: how do you, as a teacher, sort of transition from talking about mediation, which is non-binding, to arbitration, which is binding, and help the students really get it? So I would love it if you could share sort of some of your thoughts.
So, we have as law professors these definitions of mediation and arbitration. Mediation is a process where a neutral intervener helps parties discuss issues of concern. Well, by the time I get to my second sentence along those lines, everybody's eyes are glazed over, so these definitions of mediation and arbitration. So I have looked for, with the help of a variety of colleagues, fun ways that perhaps are memorable in terms of defining different processes. One such way is let me mention, I just came across the article by Kristen Blankley and many colleagues on ADR is not a household term, sort of laying out how most of the public really do not know the difference between mediation and arbitration. And frankly, this is going to sound terrible, but a lot of people applying for a mediation clinic do not know the difference between mediation and arbitration. I also find many, many lawyers do not know the difference. And I always have fun asking people, it's probably not fun for them, but it's interesting for me. So instead of formal definitions, which of course are there in the books, and of course you can review, I think it's important to somehow get people involved. And so I like to lay out a conflict, a dispute. I've done a lot of training with Josh Stolberg where we take on roles of disputing parties, and then you ask the class to arbitrate. and or media. I usually start with arbitration because it's a little simpler. With using this device, you just have to make a decision. So, for example, one could use the famous case from getting to yes, two siblings fighting over an orange. They each have arguments about why they should get the orange. Or you could use a piece of cake, and if you're, depending where you are, actually have a piece of cake that somebody can get at the end. And then you ask the class to decide. Well, an orange, since it's not numbers, maybe it's fun to use that, but or the cake, cut it in half, and then you point out, well, some processes are better than others. Yeah, you could cut it in half, but one person cuts and the other person gets to choose the piece, so you can refine it. With those simple examples, I think it's not quite as rich as an example that has numbers. So let me just very briefly give you a fact pattern. I don't think anybody else will be as drawn to this as I am, because it came from a real case, and it's about horses, which I like. So the case is, you act out in front of the class, if you have a colleague teaching with you, a dispute in which a person just went to their horse trainer. Remember, this is a real case, to sell their horse. And the guy was a trusted trainer. I always like to think of the relationship as sort of fiduciary, although I wouldn't use that in acting it out. And they agree on a price for the horse, $20,000. And the trainer goes and sells the horse and comes back and gives the owner $20,000. The other character is the trainer. Well, who says, yes, this was the deal. So the owner, after this deal was concluded and after she got the $20,000, goes to a cocktail party in which somebody congratulates her for the $100,000 sale. So the question for the class is, arbitrators, after you give the trainer a chance to tell her or his side, is who gets that $80,000 in play. So the trainer story is basically that the deal they struck was to sell the horse for 20. And not that it was verbalized, but of course he would get the rest. He or she would get the rest.
Okay.
And so, but very simply, 2 minutes for each character, and you ask the room to make a decision. What's so remarkable, I think, about almost any case is the variation. Some people go for the horse owner, some people go for the trainer, some people go all the way across the spectrum. So it's just a good case or any case, I think, it's fun to point out how risky arbitration is. And then mediation. Well, what do you do with these two characters if you want to help them come to an agreement? And people have all sorts of ideas, and then at the end of this exercise, sort of laying out a simple sort of chart. Well, what was your job as an arbitrator? And answer, the job was to decide, to give a decision. And what was your job as a mediator? To help the parties decide. What was the job of the parties?
Yep.
Parties persuade the neutral in arbitration, and in mediation, well, the neutral helps the parties persuade each other. And you contrast the adversarial arbitration to the collaborative mediation, and people have their experience to work with, which is fun. And then the win-lose aspect, usually somebody gets burned, either the horse owner or the trainer, with the outcome, and the win-win potential in a real case like this. There's so many possibilities for what can happen with that $80,000. They could buy new horses or and so forth. So I think it's memorable if you can put people into the roles of feeling what it is to have to come to a decision and what it is to have to help people who are not being very nice to each other work it out. So, you know, and you can use examples, all sorts of different examples. The one other, I know we don't have much time, but the one other thing I've used quite a bit is light bulb jokes. I don't know, are you familiar with those? How many?
Yeah.
How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb, for example? One answer is, I don't know. Why do you ask?
What do you think? Yeah.
What do you think? Yes, exactly. Then how many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? Do you know an answer to that one?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've heard a lot of different ones. What is your favorite one?
I get a laugh, and depending on the audience, I say, by the way, I am a lawyer, and you know, so please, how many can you afford?
Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay, but then you get to the arbitration mediation, which is how many judges does it take to change a light bulb? Answer, judges don't change light bulbs. They'll tell you who's responsible for the darkness.
I like that.
Isn't that nice?
That's really good. I've never heard that one before.
Before we get to arbitration and mediation, let me say these riddles come from Doug Van Epps, the fabulous director of Michigan's program, ADR programs for so long, just wonderful sense of humor. And he opened a program with us once, a mediation program. So how many arbitrators does it take to change a light bulb? Same answer. Arbitrators don't change light bulbs. They tell you who's responsible for the darkness, and you cannot appeal whatever they decide.
And you're paying me by the hour.
Yes. Then how many mediators does it take to change a light bulb? So the answer Doug gave the first time I heard this, I've kind of stuck with, although it's certainly not applicable to every form of mediation, but Doug's answer was mediators don't change light bulbs either. They help light bulbs change themselves.
Ooh, that's good.
I just see, you know, when we give kind of definitions of neutral interveners who help find issues and develop options and come to, not quite as much energy as if you can bring a story or a riddle or something fun to the discussion.
I fully agree with that. Yeah, I don't know if have you ever done the Senate table exercise? Does that sound familiar? That's another one,
right?
Yeah, where you can either do it like you did, where arbitration first, then mediation, or you can do it mediation and then arbitration. But it's that same idea where you're thinking about the differences, but in action, right? So we're seeing it in action. So the definitions, because I fully agree, you're right. We can talk about definitions till we're blue in the face, but how do you get someone to really understand what something is? Doing, right? Doing is always going to be the best.
And you know what's so remarkable about this is arbitration mediation. I mean, they're so different.
I know.
They're just like radically different. At least they're different if the neutral performing the service knows what the job is. But I mean, it as the article I referenced in the beginning, ADR is not a household term, points out, it's actually quite dangerous for people, lawyers and clients and lay people, not to know the difference between these processes.
Yeah.
So much is at stake.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I love that. And I'm glad that we're talking about this and even this podcast to talk about just this basic question of the differences, because I actually had done focus groups down in Denver years ago for an empirical study. And yeah, most people had no idea. They thought arbitration was non-binding. They thought mediation was meditation. It's very, and look at, it matters, right? Especially considering how prevalent arbitration clauses are in contracts.
Yeah.
So,
and how prevalent, ADR generally is. New York has moved to presumptive ADR, which by and large means mediation. But then mediation being offered sometimes looks a bit like arbitration. I mean, it's just, people have got to know what they're getting.
Yeah. Well, I promised I wouldn't take your entire afternoon, and I know it's later for you there in New York. So I just wanted to thank you again. This has been a lot of fun, and it's been really fun, and I love your jokes. I'm going to play those again, and I'm going to use them, and I'll cite you. So
cite Doug Van Epps too.
Okay, and Doug Van Epps. Yeah, he is fantastic.
Yes.
Well, listen, this has been delightful. I just want to thank you again, and yeah, have a great afternoon.
Okay, you too. Thank you, Amy.